Hi guys, I thought I would re-record my wafer paper orchid tutorial. I did this the other day as a Facebook Live, but there was a big shadow across the top of my workboard. So hopefully today you can see it a little bit more clearly. So today we're going to make a wafer paper orchid with a flower paste centre. I like the combination of the two. I think it gives a really nice stylized orchid flower. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start off by making the centre. Now I use Saraceno modelling paste for this, and I'm just going to use it in white today. You can colour this if you know that you want a purple centre or yellow, then do feel free to colour this beforehand. I quite like making lots of centres in white and then using petal dust or airbrush dust to colour them when I need them. Now I'm rolling this fairly thin to cut out my centre. And we are going to use a Moth Orchid centre that looks like this today. I will pop a link to all the tools that I use in the comment box. I give it a press down and a wobble round to make sure that it cuts nice and cleanly, and if it gets stuck in the cutter, which quite often happens, use a little Dresden tool to push it out. Now I'm actually going to modify this a little bit because I don't want the top bit here. I want to keep the point and the side petals. Now I'm going to use a knife just to cut this top bit off, and I'm going to follow the shape of the side petals and cut in a little bit of a V in towards the middle of the centre. This will make attaching a wired centre to your orchid a lot easier later on. Now this little point here as well, we want to cut that in half so that we've got some curvy petals at the bottom. So make a little slit there, and that means that we can curl those edges upwards and give the orchid a little bit more shape. The next bit is to use a ball tool on our orchid petals to cup the side petals and give it a little bit more movement. I'm actually going to use the big side of my ball tool to cup these outside petals and the bottom point. So pushing it down and pulling it inwards towards the middle, push down and pull inwards towards the middle, and that cups these side pieces inwards a little bit. And then I'm going to turn my petal round and pull these two bottom points in towards the middle again. It gets a little bit stuck, make sure to move it around so it doesn't all bunch up. And again, pull that in towards the middle. So this cups these bottom points upwards. And then I'm going to swap my ball tool around and use the small edge and cup the side corners in a little bit. So that gives it a really nice shape. I like to dry these actually in egg boxes. I find that the little bottom of them is just the right shape for drying orchid centres, lots of flowers actually. So I'm going to pop this in the bottom there. There you go, you can see that, and leave it to dry. Once it's dry, you should end up with a nice little orchid centre ready to be dusted. I'm actually going to show you the big outside petals now, and then we'll pop the orchid all together. Now for this, I'm going to use my wafer paper. Now I quite like doing this with a double layer of wafer paper rather than just one. I find that it gives the petals a little bit more substance, makes them a little bit thicker. If you have got thick wafer paper though, you can just use one layer. Today I'm going to stick these together using a little bit of piping gel. Now the wafer paper has a shiny side, I'm hoping this comes out nice and clear, a shiny side and a textured side, so you can see the difference there if I put them together. Hopefully. I like using the textured side outwards rather than the shiny side, so I'm going to stick both shiny sides together. I've got some piping gel here and just a large makeup brush to paint it on with. Don't use too much piping gel in one go because it will start to dissolve the wafer paper. I'm going to give the paper just a nice even coat. And then stick the other sheet on top. Give it a good press down to make sure it's sticking. You can see the moisture in the piping gel is starting to make the wafer paper curve up a little bit. Making sure it's got really well stuck together. Now I'm going to use a template to cut round for my orchids. Now I have a whole load of these, which start in large, medium, small, small and extra small. Now if I was doing a spray of orchids running up the front of a cake, or maybe falling over the edge of a cake, I would do a range of sizes for the orchid so that they can get smaller down towards the edge of the orchid stem. I think visually it just looks nicer, so that's what I would do. If you're just using one or two though on a cake, maybe stick with the same size, up to you. Today I am going to use the large one because it's easier to see, so I'm going to pop the other ones away. You'll notice that they have arrows on them. This is to remind me which way up the petals need to be when I put the flowers together, because it's really easy to try and put them together like this. It just doesn't quite look right. So the arrows are there just to jog my memory. Bring my wafer paper back. Now I'm going to draw around my template just with a pencil. You can use a food safe pen if you'd rather. I'm going to cut all of the pencil off, so there's not going to be any pencil left on the flower. So just draw around the outline. I like to do the cutting out of these petals when the piping gel is fresh. I find that if you leave it too long, it can become a little bit brittle when you're trying to cut it. So I'd always suggest, even if you're using bigger sheets of wafer paper, cut out all your petals while the piping gel is a little bit sticky still. I also find then it's less likely to leave a little bit of a gap around the edge of your petals. So there we go, we've got our two petals that we need to make our orchid, and now we're going to put a little bit of detailing on. So I'm going to use my foam mat again and my favourite tool, my Dresden Tool, and this is going to add some veining onto our wafer paper orchids. I'm going to use the pointy side of my Dresden Tool today. It's got a little bit of a groove across the back edge, and that's what we're going to use to put some lines into our orchids. Now, starting towards the middle and working out towards the point of our petal, I'm going to push down and keep pulling the Dresden Tool out towards the edge of the wafer paper. I'm trying to angle my Dresden Tool out a little bit so that it's in a bit of a fanned motion. Hopefully you can see a little bit more groove effect on that top petal there. I'm going to turn the petal around again and do some more on the other side. Again, start in the middle and pull out towards the outside. You need to find a happy medium here. If you put too much pressure down, you'll end up pushing your Dresden Tool straight through the wafer paper, which wouldn't be ideal. But if you're too light, you won't put any grooves on your wafer paper at all. Again, if you do this while your piping gel is still sticky, it really helps, and it doesn't go too brittle. There we go. At this point as well, I like to give the petals a little bit of a squeeze to cup the petals a little bit, give them a bit more shape rather than being flat. So finger on top and 2 fingers underneath, give it a little bit of a pinch in, just to give the petals a little bit more of a natural shape. I'm going to do the same with these petals here, starting in the middle and pulling out towards the outside, again in a bit of a fanned motion rather than going straight across. Start in the middle and fan out towards the edge of your wafer paper. Turn it around. I'm going to do the same on the other side. There we go. And again, I'm going to cup the petals a little bit, just using my hands to give them a bit of shape. So when they sit together, they've all got a bit of movement. There we go. Now for sticking these together, I like to use a little bit of piping gel again. Some people do use water. I just find that I'm more likely to end up dissolving my wafer paper rather than sticking them together. So piping gel is definitely the glue for me. I'm just using a small paintbrush with a little bit of piping gel in the middle of my orchid here. Just a tiny bit there in the middle. And then I'm going to pop my centre petal on top. Give it a good press down in the middle there. Make sure it's really stuck. And there are outside petals. Now, we have to make the very, very centre of our orchid. Now again, I'm going to use my Saraceno paste for this. And this is where you can wire them as well. I'm not going to wire them today, but if you wanted to, I will talk you through the process as well. So I'm going to use just a little bit of the white Saraceno modelling paste again. I'm just going to warm it up a little bit because it's got a little bit more solid while I've been talking away. And then I'm going to pinch a little bit off. Now, depending on how big you want your centres, that will depend on how big a piece of modelling paste you use. Might be a little bit big for what I want. Take a little bit more off. So roll it on the palm of your hand into a ball. And then we're going to roll this backwards and forwards a little bit to make it into a little bit more of a sausage. Then I use my little finger to create a little bit of a waist there on our sausage, so it's skinnier in the middle and thicker at the bottom. And this is where our Dresden tool comes back in again. We're going to make a little bit of a V in the bottom part of our centre. So I'm going to use the pointy end of my Dresden tool again and just push down. You see that spread out the bottom bit slightly. And then this top part here, I'm going to curve over the top. So we end up with a little centre. I like to push the bottom bit in a little bit as well. Okay, so that's going to be our centre. Now we've got our little individual bits of our wafer paper orchid. I'm going to dust these today with a little bit of petal dust. I think I'm going to do the centre bright pink again because I quite like the pink, and I am going to hopefully use these on a cake later on this week as well. So I'd like some matching ones. I like using just a big fluffy brush. I've been dusting already, so I have a makeup brush with a little bit of pink petal dust already on it. So I'm going to use that. Sit it on a little bit of kitchen roll to catch the excess. This is just a really big fluffy brush, so I'm going to go over and dust the whole centre. Make sure you remember to go in underneath the curves at the bottom there. And across the bottom. If you wanted a little bit more of a natural looking centre, you can use paler petal dusts. And if you use a small paintbrush, you can go in and paint little dots into the centre as well. Make it look a little bit more natural. I'm going to dust the back of these petals as well, because they're curving upwards. You'll see them on the cake. So make sure that they're all well covered. There we go, a nice pink centre and very pink hands as well. And the very, very middle, I am going to do in a metallic ginger glow. This is one of my favourite colours. I use it a lot. I'm just going to use another small paintbrush and dust this on dry. I've got another centre here that I've left to dry for a little bit longer so that I could use it straight away today. Don't try and do this when your centres are too soft, because you'll just end up putting brush marks on them and pushing them out of shape. I'm just dry dusting this on today. If you want a stronger colour, you can use make this into a paint and paint it on. But today I'm just going to dry dust it. Give it a little bit of a sheen. Make sure you get the back as well, because you'll see the top part once you put it all together. And there we have it. There's our bright pink centre and our little bit of metallic ginger glow. Now for putting this all together, I am going to use piping gel again. Bring this all back in. So a little bit of piping gel just in the middle of the orchid here. And I'm going to stick my pink centre on. Now if you wanted to wire these and put them all together, I would push a little tiny hole with a wire into the top of your wafer paper. And then you can thread a wired centre through much more easily. So I would push the wire through the middle there to make a little hole, and then you'll be able to thread a wired centre through your wafer paper to stick it all together. I have one that I made the other day. Let me show you this. So I've made this centre in the same way. You roll it into a sausage, then put that little V in. But to attach the wire, I've actually heated up my wire here, just on the end. So I wave this across a candle just for a few seconds to heat up the wire so that it gets really hot. And then while your flower paste is still soft, push the wire into the top part of the centre here. And because the wire's hot, it melts the sugar a little bit and it properly sticks to the wire. When you're wiring tiny centres and smaller things, I find that's the easiest way to do it, rather than making a little hook in the end of the wire. I just find it's a little bit more secure. And then when you're threading this on, there isn't any bulk here at the back of your center. You can thread this straight through onto your orchid. In fact, I can do it with this one because I put a little hole in. So you can push the center through onto your orchid. And there we go. You've got a wire there that you can then attach lots of orchids to and make a spray. I'm not going to wire this one today because I actually have a cake in mind that doesn't need them to be wired. So I'm going to take that one out, and I am going to pop my other center back on. So this center is stuck with a little bit of piping gel, and I'm going to pop a little bit more on top so that my center has something to stick to as well. Again, a little bit of piping gel in there. And stick my center down. Make sure that it's lined up. Now the piping gel will take a little bit of time to dry, but I'm just going to pop this to one side and leave it to fully set. And then I'm ready to put it on the cake. These are really light as well, which is really useful when you're popping lots of flowers onto a cake. There you go. So there you go, that's my wafer paper orchid tutorial. If you liked this video, please feel free to give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, then please hit the subscribe button. I will be uploading more videos soon. Thanks guys, bye!